Pull up, grab the fuel nozzle, and get ready to fuel up on trends and strategies to grow your travel center business in this episode of the Truck Stops Here, brought to you by NATSO. Now, here's your host, Amy Toner.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Truck Stops Here. I'm your host, Amy Toner. You are listening to the Truck Stops Here, the NATSO Foundation's podcast. The NATSO Foundation is the research, education, and public outreach subsidiary of NATSO. And I'm here at an event with Stephanie Stuckey, CEO of Stuckey's.
Good morning. Yeah.
And Andrew Evans, NATSO's Vice President of Marketing.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you so much.
And I thought, because I have these two smart people with me today, we thought we'd talk to Stephanie and ask her a few branding and messaging. You know, she's always on the road looking at truck stops, and I'm sure you have like a good advice for how they can cater to the public and all great things that I know our members want to listen to us about. And we had you at NATSO Connect, which was awesome. You were in our Great Ideas panel.
That was so much fun, and I got a lot of great ideas from that panel. So it wasn't just me up there sharing my thoughts. So much interaction. It was a wonderful event.
Good. Well, before I just pelt you with questions, can you just tell us about Stuckey's?
I'd love to. So Stuckey's was founded by my grandfather, W.S. Stuckey Sr., in 1937 as a roadside pecan stand in Eastman, Georgia. And he grew it from those very humble beginnings to, at our peak in the 70s, we had over 350 stores in 40 states. We owned a candy plant, a distribution center, a trucking company, and a billboard company that covered the nation's highways with 4,000 billboards advertising our stores. But he sold the company, and it was out of our family hands for decades.
Okay.
3 years ago, I had the unexpected opportunity to buy the company. I'm an environmental attorney and former legislator, so not a background in this business, but I plunged right in. It's been a wonderful adventure. When I bought the company, we were six figures in debt. There were only 13 original stores still standing. So we had a lot to do. All the manufacturing, the sign company, the trucking company, all that was gone. So we've had to rebuild the brand, but we now own our own manufacturing facility outside of Augusta, Georgia. We have a candy plant and a pecan snack production plant. And we are producing our in-house brand now, the Stuckey's pecan log rolls and our snacks and our candies. And we supply some 5,000 retailers all over the country, including a lot of NATSO members.
I was just going to ask that. Of those, a lot of them are members. So you are on the road a lot and in our NATSO truck stops. What do you like about truck stops?
I love it when they have a sense of place.
Okay.
And the local community. So when you pull over, you know that, for example, I was on the panel with the Oasis Travel Center in Robertsdale, Alabama, and you get a sense that you're in Alabama. They have a lot of local products, but they also have an experience. You walk in there, first of all, to get in there, you have to go through an old VW van that looks like something out of Scooby-Doo.
Right.
So you have this great entrance. I mean, they welcome you in a way that you feel like people are super excited to have you there. And then you see this giant ship that is also the cashier stand, and they have an old railroad diner where you can, or railroad car that is a diner. So it's just the whole experience. That's what people are looking for, whether you're a chain or whether you're an independent with a handful of stores or truck stops, you can create that experience. And so that's what gets me super excited, is knowing that you're in a special place, and they cater to the community as well as catering to travelers.
So Stuckey's has, and I guess you really have a really strong brand. Tell us about that. Why is that important to you?
Branding is everything.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing that I do. I'm the chief executive officer, but I'm also the chief branding officer. So I think that is my number one role. And branding is selling. Yeah. So if you're not branding your company, you are not getting out there and letting folks know about what you offer, and you're not selling and you're not making a profit. So branding to me is everything. When I decided to buy the company, rebranding was our number one focus. And what we did was we spent a day basically locked in a room, our team, trying to decide what is our why, what is our brand about. And your brand cannot be about, we're going to sell product and make money.
Yeah.
that's not a brand. Your brand has to be what is special, different, and unique that has sticking power. And so we decided our brand is about the road trip. That's what we've been celebrating since our origins in the late 1930s. So we want, when people think about going on a road trip, they think about taking a Stuckey's pecan log roll or our pecan snacks along with them. Like, it's not a road trip unless Stuckey's is along with you.
Absolutely.
In some way. So what I do for branding is I tell stories. It's very rare that you will see me on social media or on a podcast talking about you should buy our snack nuts. Instead, I like to celebrate that uniquely American experience that is taking a road trip.
Yeah.
It's about freedom. It's about independence. It's about fun. That's an American experience, and that's about getting on the road. And that's what NATSO celebrates as well. Whether you're a trucker or you're a business traveler or you're a family going on vacation, I think that experience of traveling by car should be something enjoyable. And that's what we can all offer at NATSO.
I feel like Andrew has some questions about this.
I do. I've been taking
Dive
notes.
on in.
So the experience and the brand experience. And I'd like to get a little bit of your thoughts on how you create that experience and how that experience has evolved from prior to you owning the company, and a lot of people's memories from way back in the 50s, 60s, 70s of their Great American Road Trip, and how the new refreshed Stuckey's brand fits into that equation, and how that experience has evolved, and how you see that evolution. And so I guess there's a lot to consider there, but
A lot to unpack.
yeah.
One of our biggest challenges, I'll be honest, has been evolving the brand and making sure that we're still relevant. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love what I consider to be our core demographic, which is white males over the age of 55, that really is the core base, followed by white females over the age of 55. Love them. We are so grateful that they continue to support our brand, but you can't have sticking power and longevity if you don't think about how are you going to continue to be relevant to other generations. And so what I've done actually just very recently is, just like we started when we were rebranding and we got people together and brainstormed, I got a group of millennials together and brainstormed, and they spent a week reviewing all of our social media collateral. And they came back to me and they said what they thought was relevant and what wasn't relevant. And what was really interesting is there were a couple of buckets that they found appealing, categories of post. Number one, the road trip. So I love that what we picked as our brand story is something that really is ageless and timeless. You can be 10 years old or you can be 70 and you still enjoy a road trip.
Yeah.
The key is to make sure that your stories about the road trip are going to appeal to all generations. So frankly, I'd been doing a fair amount of posts that were celebrating things that were super popular in the 70s. Like I visited the Brady Bunch show, the house that's featured in the Brady Bunch. Well, I love that, and my fellow Gen Xers love that, but I talked to my business partner who's 17 years younger than me, and he had a blank look and said, what is the Brady Bunch? And so I realized I have to start making sure that my posts are a little more relevant when I'm talking about the road trip.
Right.
So that's one. And so just for example, I visited the Quick Mart that's featured in The Simpsons. There's an actual convenience store you can visit in Myrtle Beach that is just like the one in The Simpsons. So I visited that and I posted about that, and I was totally hyped to see that the comments, the engagement on that post were people who were a good 15, 20 years younger than me. So that was one. Mm-hmm. The other category that I think is also timeless is stories of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And folks really connect with stories about me being a female entrepreneur, the entrepreneurial journey, what's it like to raise capital, what is it like to scale, what is it like to build a team and have culture. So all of that category of stories was relevant to them. So it's a bit of a long answer, but you had a big question.
So I guess I'd like to get your thoughts on like your customers' experience. And I see on social media a lot of times your customers they'll be at a Stuckey's or they'll see one of your products in a lot of our member stores, and they'll post about their experience. And how has that grown organically, and like where do you see that going?
It's completely grown organically. None of that has been manufactured. None of that is the result of me reaching out to folks and saying, hey, you get a free Stuckey's hat or something if you post about us. It's all organic. And so that's the beauty of storytelling and word of mouth marketing, is if you tell stories that connect with people on an emotional level, they are going to share on their own without any coercion. So that's why, and I don't mean to criticize people who use influencers and influencer marketing, but I have found, one, I can't afford that, but two, it's inauthentic. If you are really doing branding right, you're going to get those influencers out there, and they're people who just naturally love your brand, and they are not paid. They are super crazy about your brand. One thing I mentioned at the NATSO discussion that a lot of people afterwards, I literally had a dozen people say, this was my biggest takeaway, so I'm going to share it on the podcast, is to have a story that will connect with people and will encourage them to share organically. It needs to have three things, and I like acronyms, so I'm going to use an acronym. It's AIR. It needs to be authentic, interesting, and relevant. So if your post is something that's real, that actually happened, it's authentic. If it's interesting.
Yeah.
So people always, like you said earlier, Amy, you're always on the road. I'm actually not always on the road, but I'm not posting me sitting at my computer or in a staff meeting or on a Zoom call. Like, how boring is that? That's not interesting. So I make it interesting. And I get comments. Sometimes people will reach out to me and say, when do you work? Well, I work all the time, but I'm not going to post about that. So make it interesting. And then the third is key, relevant. Who is your audience? Who do you want to appeal to? And making sure, like, I'm going to post about The Simpsons some, so I'm not just appealing to people who were born in 1965, like I was.
Yeah,
right?
You were telling me about the steamed hams episode
last night. The steamed hams, right?
The greatest Simpsons episode ever.
Yeah, so I actually have started watching The Simpsons, making sure I'm culturally relevant and understand all this. And let me give a quick shout out, because AIR is not mine. It is the creation of a man named Ted Wright, who wrote a book called Fizz Marketing. And I loved his book so much that I bought a bunch of them. I give them to people. I will give you a copy, Andrew. I have a copy on me. And he is now on our board, and he recently purchased some shares in Stuckey, so he is a co-owner with me and my other business partner.
Awesome.
So Ted Wright, he's the one who came up with AIR. I use it every single time I do a post, and it's made all the difference.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I look forward to seeing you out and about at more truck stops over the next year. And thanks for being a big supporter by coming to our conference. And I know that our members really learned a lot from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you both do to elevate the truck stop business. I mean, it has come a long way from when I was a kid and pulled over. It's not just for truckers. Truck stops are for everyone. They're for families. They're for road trippers like me. They're for business travelers. So everyone should want to pull over at one of your many membership organizations' locations.
Okay, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you our fun questions, which I think I know the answer to the first one, which is, what's your go-to on-the-road snack?
Okay, so I'm not going to say pecan log rolls, since I've already, clearly I love pecan log rolls. I love Sahali snacks. Those are good.
All right. How do you take your truck stop coffee?
With cream. And you know what? I am a total sucker for that flavored stuff.
Yeah, me too.
The cappuccino that's full of, I'm sure it's just full of artificial stuff, but it's yummy.
Okay. If you're stuck at a truck stop in a snowstorm, how do you pass the time?
Talking to people.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you prefer to ride or drive?
Ride. Oh my gosh, I love to not have to drive. My goal someday is to afford a driver, because I'm always just looking around.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so this is our last question. It's a faux controversial, which is it truck stop, travel center, or travel plaza?
I say all. I
Yeah.
personally like to say Travel Plaza because it just sounds very elegant and fun and a little more high end, which I think is absolutely the case these days. I think still people think truck stop might not be as more of a experience, but truck stop has been in use for a very long time, so I use that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Truck Stops Here. You can find us online at natso.com/podcast. If you want to ask us any questions or reach out to me at editor@natso.com.
The Truck Stops Here was brought to you by NATSO, the association representing truck stops and travel centers. Visit natso.com for more information.